Thanks, Michelle. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy day and just join us for a quick 60-minute webinar. This is our final webinar of the 2012 series. We'll actually be following on with more of these next year. So I just want to get through right to the agenda because we have a specific audience that we're talking to and speaking to, and a lot of you have communicated to us that we've met this year at conferences and working with customers in just around providing actionable data insights to our IT operations team. And so I just want to kind of review agenda, give you the roadmap ahead for the next 60 minutes, and then we'll dive into some of these areas around some slides, what I call 30,000-foot view, and then get to a very specific solution demo. And what I'm focused on today, we're looking at the challenges facing IT operations team. And we've lived in those shoes. Quite a few of our team have actually worked on the IT operations management and delivery side as well as implementation. And most of these challenges that we're talking about today are related to lack of visibility across our IT infrastructure that we're responsible for. We're talking about real-time data insights that are critical to us. So today we want to consider IT operations, and when I say that, I'm referencing our frontline support. They're on the frontline ensuring that, high level of availability of service and the quality of that service. But it also goes to those teams of configuration management or problem investigation, and some of these others, like the NOC that is supporting the frontline. So we're going to consider them as we go through, and as I mentioned these challenges, I'm sure a lot of these will come up and you'll think of those. We're going to provide an overview of a solution called Splunk. Quite an interesting name. The interesting name fits this unique software solution. We're going to talk about why our team is working there. And so this is the roadmap ahead. I'm also going to be providing a live demo. I'm running Splunk in our lab environment on an application stack, and we're going to see the value it brings to IT operations. And then we're going to close it out by Q&A. But everyone's on mute just to keep the noise down on the call. But if you do have questions, we love to interact with you during the webinar. Michelle's facilitating, and she'll let me know if there's questions coming in. We're also allowing time for a Q&A, and then our team's available to follow up with any follow-up questions out of the session. So let's get started. And I want to tell you a little bit about EffectTech, just to kind of, you may have heard about us or received this webinar invite. We're an 8-year-old software company in the South Bay of San Francisco area. We're focused on software and sales and consulting, and we have a very deep expertise in IT operations and business operations management, as well as IT service operations. And if you look across our bench, there are folks that have walked in very similar shoes to what you have faced from managing very large infrastructures, and then also our consulting team working on their side and implementing and make sure these solutions work correctly. We are a Splunk partner in North America. We have a dedicated team that is solely focused on Splunk, and I've switched up these slides today because I want to talk about, I'll introduce what Splunk is in just a few minutes, and it's all about the data and getting that data so you have those real-time insights. And I'll define a bit more, but why is EffectTech focused on Splunk? And we see great value in it. In fact, it's actually very disruptive. It's a value to the traditional IT operations that is a paradigm shift quite often, and as we looked at this early on, we were seeing that for our customers and wanted to bring that to them. It's software that brings value in just not what we're used to months and years, but in actually days and weeks. Most projects are very fast to get the use cases up and running. It's a powerful solution that's compatible with your large enterprise, but what I love about it myself is I don't have to engage a program or an implementer that's going to have to write these very complex custom integration points. It also, what we're seeing is it starts to reduce those 1 a.m. SWAT calls. And I've been on many of those where we're up in the middle of the night looking for what went bump, what fell off a shelf and is not working correctly, and looking for what we call the needle in the haystack. And I'll talk more about that. But we're very passionate about this. This is the first solution that we've seen come along in a very long time that allows us to get the value to our customers very quickly. So we've built a whole new practice around it. So with that, a little bit about EffectTech. I want to turn the page here, and I'd love to open up and just talk about your challenges in your environment, but we'll just kind of bring the picture up, like say the 30,000-foot view. And that is that for operations today, for IT operations, we are looking at very complex environments that span across numerous organizations. They are now including, we wish it was just the days of physical servers, but now is virtual and even reaching into the cloud. We know this technology across the stack goes both in a horizontal as well as a vertical direction. Today's data centers have evolved. It's become, to the point of complexity that we have layered groups of siloed, interconnected technologies working in an environment without boundaries. And the thing of this is that the business and your customers are depending directly on the IT that we're providing to them, and they demand more of it. So the traditional tools we have, we talk to anyone in the NOC or the support center, they have a whole tool set there and they can reach into their bag, but a lot of those are focused on very specific applications, whether it's core IT or out to the business layer. And we have different dashboards we create around these. They call them panes of glass, and I'm looking into those little areas, but I lack visibility across this entire infrastructure. And one of the keys here is that I lack visibility because I don't have the data I need to make the right decision. So to be able to do that, I want to consider just a little bit more some of these challenges. As we look at this here, we consider the complex IT environment that you're operating in. These layered silos, I'll come back to this because I've recently in some projects we were dealing with where we are implementing a certain solution. It's in a certain aspect, part of the business we're supporting, and we're in our own silo that is very specific and customized and fits perfectly. But other parts of the IT, core IT out to the business are very dependent upon it. And when problems arise, finding issues within that technology stack or somewhere across the horizontal stack is very, very difficult. I have to go to multiple tools, or as often a lot of you on the phone today are used to, that midnight call. We got to start a SWAT call. WebEx is up and going. All right, you go check this log file while I check this system, and we got a system administrator on. Oh, let's get to DBA, and the call grows, and we're spending hours of time on here. And we're trying to get our metrics down around fast MTTR. It isn't happening because it's very challenging. These point tools aren't giving us that visibility. So what I want to do is let's do a day in the trenches, and then I'm going to come back and say, all right, with Splunk involved in here, how does this help us? So the service desk gets the call from the customer. Online orders it isn't processing properly. They're seeing errors. They can't complete their order. Customers frustrated. The service desk frontline, they may look on a dashboard and they might see some indicators, but in this case, it's all green. So they go on to the next area and they're looking at, and they've escalated it to the application support team because this is the application that's supporting the web store. So they have some Java monitoring tools, but they don't see anything either, so they have to call the developer. They need them to actually look in the log files. So the developer has to stop working on that new code, the next version they're getting roll out, and they go and actually look. They say, no, I don't see it in the code here. I need access to the production logs. Well, that's where the system administrator is, and the system administrator should be focused on overall management of the environment. But quite often what we see is they become a data butler. I need this log file to fix this issue. And they've spent more time serving up log files and troubleshooting for the level 2, level 3 support than they do actually completing their job. So it's consuming a lot of their hours. But now they've provided those log files back to the application developer, and once they go through doing some manual investigation, they don't find a problem, but they find something pointing to the database tier. So they engage the database administrator, they go some additional audit logs, and they see something pointing to a bad query, but at point they may have been able to work around this and find a temporary workaround, but they found out what. So that they've answered the question of what, and some of our point tools will tell us what, but they don't tell us why. And that's the challenge that we're going to see with Splunk here in just a minute, is we're able to actually start to tell the story of why did this occur and not just what. So imagine for a minute, what if you were able to empower your service operations and your IT's frontline and tier 2 and 3 and on with the ability that they could search the data center or their application systems just like the internet. Provide them something like Yahoo and Google, that type of a simple interface. I go in and put the application name, or I put the IP address, and I am now seeing what's going on with that across the entire infrastructure. That path to the fast MTDR, which we're looking for and trying to achieve, it's like a needle trapped in a haystack. And this is where the term Splunk comes from. We're splunking around midnight looking for it with our headlamps on. It's trapped in the haystack, and we want to get to it. So what if we could actually provide that searchable interface to get to that? What if you could actually see a record of all activity, that when the customer call comes in, I can see their activity, their behavior in the environment, giving me visibility into, well, I see what's going on with your computer system, or I can even actually proactively avoid that. Or your mobile device if you're trying to order something online, as I'm using that example. Or I can see where they've received the error on the website and proactively respond to it. Or know, is it the application or the network, and enable and empower the service desk to make those critical decisions right there and cut our resolution time in half, if not more. What if you were not bound by the rules of your point monitoring tools? So often I've worked with monitoring tools. They're great, but I wish it could do this. I wish it could tell me this, because they're focused on one aspect of the data. What if you could actually stitch that monitoring tool with the other monitoring tools, with the business data, and start to tell the whole story? You're starting to get that what. I know what went bump in the night, and I now know why, and do it in real time. Meaningful insights that allow me to do it, and that's where Splunk comes in. So I want to consider the data. I know for frontline, this is not the area you focus on. Quite often, this is more, as we saw in the example, it's the application support teams. But we have the ability with this really valuable information to surface it up and enable frontline support or problem investigation at their fingertips to be able to get to it. So we see in this example here with order processing, where the customer's order comes in, and sometimes I glance, I think I'm looking at the matrix sometimes when I look at log files, because you can get a little blurry-eyed because I don't understand these files. And this is more for the data expert that's in it supporting that solution. Same with order processing. It's processing the order coming across the web server, connecting to the database. And even the customer that's calling in for support, who the customer is and all that. Or we could reach beyond IT to the business side. We just use one example here, but I think you'll get the idea, is that what is being said in social media about the web store that my critical business service I'm providing. Well, inside of this are very important insights, and we often call this data, this log data, machine data. And machine data it's readable information that I can look at it, I can read it, and out of it I can start to pull valuable insights. Now, this data we know is in its own specific dedicated storage. So you got to say, oh, okay, customer ID and order ID and product, I know what they're ordering. And then if I start to look at the order processing, I start to tell the story of what is going on for this customer. We can follow their transaction all the way through this. I can know that they had an issue right here, a connection was refused, and they called into support, and they've spent considerable amount of time on the support line. And oh, by the way, if I wanted to look on the outside, the business or the customer facing in, what are they saying in social media, if that's something that I care about from a business perspective. But the whole point of this here is we've taken machine data that it's a definitive record. It's the most valuable information from your IT infrastructure. It contains the definitive record of the user transactions, the customer behavior, the sensor activity, the machine behavior, even your security threats and fraudulent activity, and it's telling you more. It's this example here is bringing it up to where I could now bring this in and search on it, and that's where Splunk comes in. Splunk is the engine for machine data. In fact, it's an engine that allows us to have operational intelligence. It allows us to take all of this data in a very fast and easy integration point and bring that data in to a single index. And that single index now becomes searchable. It means that I can come in here and put in the web server, and I see what's going on in real time, because Splunk has a unique capability that it indexes it by timestamp. So I know based on time what happened in the last hour, what happened in the last 24 hours or the 60 days, depending on what I want to search on. So it's a very powerful solution that is up and running very quickly. And the part of it I said we're very passionate about, this is the first time we have seen a solution that we can get a customer up and running with Splunk 2 to 3 weeks most of the time what we're seeing. We find a use case, get the data in, and start quickly surfacing up to where we can even represent dashboards. You'll see this in the demo in just a few minutes. Now I'm going to open up the hood and just look a little bit further in, or we'll descend down from 30,000 foot view and look at the details here. We see some additional data coming from different sources, IP address, timestamp. All of this data comes into, and it's collected in real time and indexed in a searchable text-based index. That means it's very fast. I can now come in and take this gold mine information from my infrastructure and start to, what we say with Splunk, we can start to listen to our data. And I can start to ask it the questions I want. And I'm not constrained by a lot of things of the traditional database. I can ask whatever questions I want. And in 30 days from now, what I was asking around this server and its performance issues is possibly asking for auditing purposes. Same data, same search interface, different questions. And it's telling me why that's going on. So this single solution for operational intelligence, this single data store, nice, easy to use interface, all the nice permissions around it, I can give it to different audiences. And the great thing is it's horizontal. Oftentimes we're told in IT, think outside the box because you're really limited resources. You've got all of these great tools, but you have to think outside the box. But quite often we find these tools and approaches are inside the box. And even if we're thinking outside of it, we're constrained by that. What I love about Splunk is it smashes the box. It flattens the playing field, and now I can go across multiple use cases. This week we're focused on fast resolution for the service desk team. So in the 3 capabilities for the frontline, I can now enable them through data drill down to find that needle in the haystack immediately as the customer calls. Oh, what's your account number? What's your phone number? And I'm now doing root cause analysis that wasn't possible before from the frontline, instead of them just being an agent to record a ticket and reassign it. I can now fix incidents dramatically faster. And you're going to see a number in a few minutes where actually customers, they've measured this across the board, and it's on average 90% faster. The other part of this is you think about your configuration management team or your NOC, that real-time visibility, because Splunk consumes this data into this index. It's in real time. That means my searches that I have can be monitoring for different conditions and create live dashboards. The other thing from a developer standpoint, I could turn around and give my manager a dashboard in a matter of a few minutes if the data is there and I understand it. So it's very fast to be able to get that out there, do event correlations, telling me, well, this happened in this application stack, and over in the database tier, here's why. And we'll see that in the demo in just a second. And then finally, historical analysis. I think this is really valuable to the teams that are involved with auditing or problem investigation, starting to look for those trends or capacity planning. So Splunk has all of this from one single source of truth from operational intelligence, but many capabilities. In fact, what we find quite often, let me revisit my example, and then I'll show you a bigger picture. Let's go back to this example. Now with Splunk, the service desk agent, in their, whatever their ticketing system, we can provide direct access to Splunk through maybe a simple URL. They access Splunk. They're starting to search on that web server, and they start to see, okay, I'm seeing what happened in the last hour, and they drill down and they look at it. And we're able to tell that it's the database team that needs to work this issue. Instead of the 8+ hours, that previous example, we're down to 30 minutes. We're to the targeted team, or maybe they're actually able to solve the issue right on the front line. So with Splunk in place, measured results we're finding with customers is 90% reduction in MTTR, and escalations have been reduced by 70%. Those are great numbers. If Splunk is put in place, let's say for any one of these, the operations or customer support team, what we find quite often, because it is a horizontal technology, it starts to find other use cases, and they see and they're like, oh, you mean I can get my data in there? I can start to ask questions of it, and it expands out to where your systems administrators are looking at very specific aspects of the platform. It's complementing your other tools that you have in place, further stitching together and telling the story that they need to understand. Your auditors, your security analysts are also getting that insight, and it even reaches to the business. So let me get over to Splunk here. I just want to keep track of time. I want to show you in action because I think it really tells the story. So again, if you have any questions, go ahead and post those in chat because I've given you the big picture view, but let's take a look at some of the details. So let's go ahead and switch over. So hopefully you're seeing right now my screen of an application environment that we've splunked. It is what we call the Splunk store. We renamed it, but it is based on numerous implementations at customer sites. And I like this example because it gives a different way we go at the data. We use the term Splunk as a verb. I want to Splunk that data. I want to know what's inside that data and gain the operational intelligence that I need as an edge to complete my job. So we have in here this very common we've seen in an environment, the ability to look across this technology stack. In the data center, it could be multiple database servers, but the database tier, the application server that's responsible for processing and connecting the database for web store transactions, the web server where the customer connects. And let me tell you a little bit about this business. This is representing an online store, just like any other businesses out there where you're dependent upon your online presence for your customers connecting. Whatever service you're providing, there's some sort of online connectivity that you might depend upon. Whatever the service is, the user needs to interact with that technology. Well, in this case, they're ordering flowers and chocolates, and so we want to monitor that. It's really important to the business because there's revenue involved here. Also, we've gone beyond the traditional technology that we would Splunk and get in. We're also bringing in additional business intelligence. We've brought in our configuration files, our incidents, in this case here, our change tickets. We want to know what's changing in the infrastructure so I can quickly correlate that with what I'm seeing that's changed. Now, from another perspective, from internal, from the business side, I care about this from the service desk. I want to be able to support my customers as they have, order issues, or the IT operations team. What are we doing for capacity and performance? Or ultimately, we have the ability to take this data that we've Splunked and put it on the business side. Now, before I do this here, I want to go ahead and I want to show you the live data flow. We're bringing this off of systems right now. So what you're going to see moving by very quickly here is the flow of the data as it's coming off these different systems. And did I pause this? I may have paused this, but we're seeing the data as it comes in the last few minutes. So we're seeing data that was generated. So here comes some more web traffic and different sources. So across the tier. Now, before I get to my two use cases, one is I'm going to do a service support for an interruption of a web order that they can't complete it. And the other one is from a performance monitoring perspective from IT operations. I just want to explain core Splunk. And that is, remember I said a search capability that we see here with Splunk. So this is the interface. As I said, it's very easy to interact with, a lot like Yahoo, Google, any web interface that we're used to searching for. I've come in and I've said I want to search out of this specific index. So it's telling where am I going to, I'm going to have different indexes of data, and I'm going to go and ask it different questions. Now, right away, I'm going to go in here and say I want to look at the last 4 hours. And what we see here is now it's going to adjust starting at 5 a.m. and it's going out and it's finding all of the events out of this source of data across the entire infrastructure. And we're going to go ahead and see, and I'm seeing just a bit of latency here, so I apologize about that because of my connection across the wireless. But since I started up this system today, since 7 a.m., we're seeing all of these events. So let's say I really wanted to drill in and look at a certain time range, and that's the other great advantage of Splunk, because it indexes everything based on a timestamp as it comes in. I can drill into that time segment, so I can zoom in. I'm now looking at these events in that early 7 a.m. hour, or I can zoom out. So it's very interactive that I can drill into and look at it, this information in the search. I'm going to reset to 4 hours. Now, something else that with Core Splunk comes out of the box, I don't have to do any work here as far as just these log files, especially my web traffic, is that it's finding interesting information in those log files. And it says, all right, well, these 8 fields you really care about, and here's some additional fields that are really interesting. And it's finding what we call field value pairs in there. Here's the field, here's the value, and it'll match that up. Now, what we see here is product ID. As I said, there's a web store on the front end. Now, I may be the product specialist, and I can tell you that a AVCB01, I might know what it is. But your frontline support and some of the other people that interact with the data, they might not know those product codes. So what I really love about Splunk is we can add additional business intelligence. We can simply, whether it's a CSV file or whatever the augment information, I can quickly bring that into my index, and instead of presenting it as a product ID, I can tell you what the product names are. So now I know that you were talking about a dozen red roses that you need to order for Christmas. So this is immediately, it's telling me what are the top values in this time range that I'm looking at in the last 4 hours. I could go ahead and look at these top values overall. Now watch what happens to my search statement at the top. I didn't have to go in and put anything special in there. It adds one of the predefined commands. And Splunk has well over 150 predefined search commands that I can leverage, from statistical calculations to, in this case, what we want to see the top. So I'm going to see the top values for this, and notice how it's interactive. I can go in here and I can see it. Let's say I have a manager asking for this data in a report or a dashboard. So I can quickly come in here. They called me an hour ago or just a few minutes ago, and I want to turn around pretty quickly, so I can say, all right, I want to put this into a pie chart. Looks great. I can save this and put this into a dashboard and say, all right, go ahead and relog into the dashboard or send them a URL. You're now the hero because you're providing that insight into the IT operations manager or the marketing person that didn't have that insight before. So this is just showing you the core capability of Splunk out of the box is you can quickly get this data out to the consumer that needs it. Now I'll come back to dashboards in a few minutes. I want to go back to our use case in a second. So I'm going to switch my hat. I'm the frontline service agent that just got a call. So I'm going to use this in just a second here. So, whatever your ticketing system is, I've implemented for different customers, HP, Service Center, in this case is Remedy, but whatever your ticketing system is, your service desk, we have the ability to connect that frontline team with the insights they need to make them actionable insights that they can act upon it immediately instead of having, I got to escalate this ticket because I don't know what it is. So we have an example here that it's reported, very common in a lot of ticketing systems. What did the customer report? What was the issue? And some systems will even tell you the ability of it's related to this system, and possibly even it might tell me I could further drill in and find the IP address. And that's what I've done here to save us the sake of time. I know the IP address of this system that's involved in this web store. We also could potentially even put in here a link, investigate this application issue, put a link in here that I can come in and click on it, and I'm sitting on some interface, and in this case it happens to be the search interface, that all I'm going to do is put in here the IP address because I know that from my ticket. So before I escalate, I'm just going to go ahead and put in here 10, and I wanted you to see here that it's just like a type ahead. It says, okay, well, do you want to go ahead and use these existing searches, or do you want to find and look at these other ones? So I care about this IP address. I want to look at everything, just not the 503. That's the one they're reporting, but I want to see what else is going on. I also have the ability to come over here and say, how long do I want to look? 4 hours? We'll stay with 4 hours, okay? So it's now telling me that there have been some issues with a 503 error. Now, a 503 error, great thing is we can interpret those. Frontline, they may not be, they may not understand those codes. We can actually reinterpret those codes as Splunk. It's adding that business intelligence to where it'll tell them what that code is. We can add that information in there, and I know it's service unavailable. Now, what's really interesting is this ticket came in around this time. So these are all the 503 errors that are out there. There are a couple. Are there any others? No, it's all 503 in this case of the data that I brought in. So I'm going to drill into that one event. So what happened here is I'm sitting on this time slice of segment of 1 minute. And in here was just this. Now, that's great. You told me I have a 503 error on this server. So I know now what? In discovery or monitoring for that, that server might have told me you had a 503 error. But why? Why did I have the 503 error? Here's the power of Splunk. Come in here. I want to know everything that happened in this time segment. I simply put in that little wildcard. I am now looking at all of the transactions that occurred across all of the different sources. So here's my WebSphere logs. So a transaction started to come in. And as I go down further, as I get further down in, I don't see any errors or issues. What I want to get to is right here in the middle. I apologize for the scrolling and moving around. I'm seeing critical. So everything looked good to this point, but then all of a sudden there's critical. And I could have also in my search statement just put in critical. What am I seeing in this time segment for critical? SQL Server. There it is right there. SQL Server shut down. It could not use it. There was an error in writing the file. So instead of calling the application developer and the application management team, I am now going directly to the database team. I'm able to tell them exactly what's happened with the issue and why it caused this outage or the disruption in the service for the customer of ordering the product they're ordering. The other thing that's really powerful in Splunk is that I can proactively, we'll take the service desk off for a minute, and the operations team doesn't have to completely, they can Splunk the data and look at it and find it, but they also can proactively go in and create an alert for that critical condition and either send an email to a team and monitor in real time or send, go create an incident automatically. I can now move from that reactive state, which we find is very quick with Splunk here, to a proactive. I'm now monitoring a lot of these areas where sometimes these fall between the cracks of the different monitoring tools out there. that I can stitch this together and say, well, when this occurs in these 3 technology stacks, I want to have an alert. So we can be proactive, and I'll come back to that example in just a few minutes. So that's the core searching capability of Splunk. So if I'm in here and I'm looking at that index again, I'm just going to go back here for just a second. So another avenue at this I showed you for the products. Remember I said that I can look at status. Well, the status description, let me go back out because we're still in that time segment. So I got to kind of pay attention where I'm at in time segment. Great to switch the search time. So we're looking out 4 hours. I'm now looking at all statuses. Whoops. So we see that what we want here. What's our availability? So let's look at top values overall. Again, really valuable information, especially from an IT service operations. Think about the board, the dashboard in your NOC. This is can monitor data in real time. We could change this search right here to look at this in real time. And we can define the segment. So now I'm monitoring, when are we getting those service unavailable? Are they coming through? We should see very low occurrences of those. So it's valuable insight that we can take from the core IT team out to the IT operations and the NOC. So this is our data in real time, and we're searching on it, and we're creating reports and dashboards. Let's show you how we've actually put this into the application to be used both from the business perspective as well as from IT operations. So let's look at it from a different angle. I'm going to go to the executive view. So think about sales and marketing, and they would really like to have the insights from IT, but it's oftentimes in static reports that come every 30 days that I'm looking. I can't look at it proactively. I can't look at it in a value to me and what is the business as of today. This represents, I've seen examples of this with other customers that have implemented. They take this data, they start to represent what's currently in that data and translate it saying, what is it from a business intelligence standpoint? So we know what value is in the carts, how many are currently on our website through the web traffic. We actually have a mashup with Google Maps. I know where orders are coming from. So another customer I was talking to recently is looking to take major incidents and outages off of their service desk and put them into the Google Map outage because they're a global IT support team. They're now able to see those major outages on a map. So there's different ways that we can mash up this data that can be consumed both from a business and an IT perspective. We also can switch the view here, and let's go switch hats again back to the IT operations manager, and we can start to give them those dashboards. And again, this is your data in real time. These searches are being executed as I'm looking at it, or I can say I want it to execute every hour if these, isn't as critical. But all of the data we're seeing here is real time. So if I saw this data in the network operations center or in the operations center for IT, I would see that we've got an issue that we need to respond to. Now the SLAs that we're measuring, we're used to that traditional SLA that, okay, I've agreed upon this response time, and we maybe measure it in some sort of application and it's stuck in one area. Great thing about Splunk, because it's horizontal, it can look across all of this technology and say, okay, based on all of these tiers that we're looking at, our response time for a transaction will be 5 seconds. And if we're outside of that, we're going to go, and we can define for each color, well, we're obviously redlined right here. We're at 115%. And the number of failed transactions, there's an issue here. So not only we're missing our SLA, we got transactions that are failing left and right, but at the same time, we're measuring capacity. Another value I see of Splunk is that it's measuring well beyond your traditional, memory utilization, CPU utilization. It's looking at what's the throughput on this application in true capacity management that we want to measure. How long is it taking the transactions to move across my application stack or through the technology layer? We can actually look at data in a different range. We can look at what are the current transactions, what's the 7-day average. And right down here is our SLAs. We can follow it with a transaction ability that Splunk has and say, all right, where are we missing and where are we making it? And right now, we're not making it because it's going well over that line. We can see the transaction volumes. They're pretty high here. It's what we want to see, but obviously this is too high. So on this dashboard at their fingertips, whether it's maybe tier 2 support, we can provide some drill down capability. And the drill down capability on any of these dashboards that I'm looking at, we saw that one with the products and the status codes a few minutes ago, you can provide your Splunk, your users of Splunk, that type of access. They can drill down and they can see the search. Or you can take them to another dashboard that's further peeling back a layer. Now we're looking at this application stack itself, the web server, the app server, and the database tier. On the web server, now I know your eye probably went immediately here. You're driving your BMW and it's pegged here. So how is it that we'll address that in a second, but I want to talk about the other ones because we want to understand what else is here. Here's that one I created a few minutes ago with that search. So the value was that IT operations team says, I would really like to know my status codes in real time. And you say, no problem. You add it to the dashboard, and here it is right here. I can now interact with this data, seeing percentages. That's what we want, but we want to see a percentage as closer to 90%. Also on the application layer, looks fine from a performance standpoint, and we're also monitoring the JVM heap size. This is a Java-based application using Apache. We know that JVMs are notorious for memory leaks, consuming information. So from an application management standpoint, this is really valuable information that I have at my fingertips. And it's looking at that, and it's looking across here. Now, on the database side, we know that there's an issue here. It's pegging out. I have all of my queues. I've splunked my different queues. So I can look. I don't have to call. I don't have to get the DBA and say, check your audit logs. I have right here, and it's telling me the story. I'm not a DBA, but I know that this is well above the average it needs to be. So if I go ahead and inspect this, I drill down further. Here's an example where we've taken real-time data from our Splunk environment that the queue has been trending off the scale. It's not looking too good, but the utilization, the CPU, and memory are fine, so this isn't the issue as far as resources on the server. There's something else. We've added business intelligence. We've Splunked our change tickets, and our infrastructure changes are now brought in. I see the last three in the last few days. Let me go ahead and drill in here. I want to see what's going on. And what we issue a command. So here's an example where it allowed me to drill down. And this is a part of a search that I'm running in the background, getting that data that's in the index and telling me what are all the current change tickets for this system. Now, I can see that these look good. And I know to look, because I've done a little bit with change management, that has ticket IDs. That means it's an authorized change. But up here, I see something that's a concern. So what I could do is simply go ahead and say, show me only those with no, there we go. And so what I see now, the search, and by the way, this gets you a glimpse into the power of the search capability. I'm looking at this change ticket that was not authorized, and I see where they made a mistake right here. Heap size, it was previously 40 because we brought our configuration files in, and I know that now that I brought in that data afterwards, it's 4. So this is the power of mashing up your change information, your configuration information with the real-time environment. I now not only know what, but I know why this issue occurred. Why did the web store go down 5 days before Christmas? Because of this DBA change that was not authorized. And again, monitoring and alerting, I could have monitored for this no change ticket that wasn't authorized, or a change value on a system that I don't want changed. So yeah, hopefully you're seeing the value in Splunk, allowing us to have that visibility, whether from an IT operations standpoint, being able to see in real time what's going across the entire technology stack from different data sources. We're reaching across horizontally to tell that story from Splunk, and allowing us, again, from a search standpoint to be able to see that data. So let's go back up and wrap up. And Michelle, if there are any questions at this point as I transition, we'll go ahead and take those.
There is.
Not.
Question
Okay,
from John.
please.
Are the dashboards that you showed earlier out of the box? It sounds like I can customize them. Is that correct?
Yes, excellent question. The dashboards are there out of the box. You have a whole set of them in the tool set of what you can select and use. And the thing I like as a developer myself, I was up and creating dashboards from day one, and a lot of different ones. It's just a matter of gathering the data you want to tell the story about and then create that dashboard. So for a lot of IT ops teams that want to surface up to the management team, and you're not able to do that currently because you're dependent upon different solutions that take a long time to develop it, this is very agile. It's fast searching, reporting, allowing us to do that.
That's
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let me continue on here. We finished the demo, and the mission with Splunk, is to take this machine data, as you can see, this data that's important to you from your IT infrastructure to the business side, and make it accessible. So it's in the single index that I can search in inside of this very easy to use search interface, usable from dashboards that we can create immediately, and then valuable both to IT operations and ultimately reaching to the business. And so what I want to do is, how does your organization harness this data to make use of it? And oftentimes I look at this scale. It's a scale that we measure going towards from reactive to proactive. We've seen this in many different measurements, and that's ultimately where an IT operations team wants to be, is on the proactive, providing business value from an IT perspective. And quite often we're down in the IT silos. We're the data butlers looking for this, looking for these solutions. And the first step we can do very quickly from day one, just some very simple use cases, we can get up and going, and we're able to begin search and investigation, as you saw. Find that needle in the haystack and fix it very fast, dramatically faster than what we've done previously. As they saw on that one slide, reducing it by 90%. So from working closely with our customers, we're able to successfully harness this data and get to a point where we're seeing that information. So that means that this search bar is available, and we can fit it to the audience. So if we want them to be very focused on what they're searching on, we can give them saved searches. So a Splunk administrator can get up and running very quickly and have all the saved searches that's available for frontline and second line. What we find quite often with customers is that we can quickly move to stage 2. We can move out of the the reactive, and the reactive has been reduced, so it's I think a much more value reactive, and we can move towards that proactive, automatically monitoring issues and correlation of issues that our point solutions, our point tools are really good at sometimes in those areas. Splunk can come alongside and fill in the gaps when you say, I wish it would tell me about this before it happens. Splunk can start to do that. We can automatically identify those issues. And here's an example where we're looking at things in real time or scheduled. I want to look every night for a certain condition, and I'm going to look across all of these data sources. Splunk allows me to very quickly move into being proactive. And we see this quite often with customers implementing Splunk. But it doesn't stop there. We actually can move very quickly to what we call that end-to-end visibility. You saw that in the demo a minute ago. An example like this here, at the longest, is probably just a couple of weeks up and running. And I now have visibility to track that service that I provide back to the business and to my internal customers. I know the KPIs that I want to monitor and make those better informed decisions around, do we need to add capacity? Do we have issues around performance in this area, and start to remove those bottlenecks. So we see this example. It was from, this is a slightly different view that we saw in the previous one. And this is a business activity monitoring that's looking at the transaction time for averages, SLA infractions. So it's just a slightly different view of some data that we saw in the previous example. And then we finally can get to that IT providing value to the business, those real-time business insights. And there are many customers out there, and I'll share a couple of those examples in just a few minutes, that the business is now gaining those real-time insights from the data. We've taken our machine data from the infrastructure and starting to put the business intelligence around who's the customer, who's the account, how many orders are they making, what are they asking for, how much time are they spending on the website, and we're starting to tell that story, that it's valuable, that it grows organically in the organization, almost like wildfire, because they see the value that it's up and running with Splunk, because it's fast time to value. So we can, from a business perspective, failed purchases is really important. We want that to be a low number. So why is that? Well, now we can go to IT operations and investigate what's causing that. So I want to share 2 customer examples, and then we'll get to the Q&A, and we'll keep us on time here. First of all, Macy's. Macy's is currently using Splunk. As we know, we're familiar with, in fact, I was on there recently looking for something for my wife. They have their online presence, Macy's.com and Bloomingdale's. They're amongst the world's premier website retailers. They had a situation during the holiday season, this occurring back in 2002 and on. They were having increasing traffic volumes, excuse me, with as the volume increased to online shopping, and their online sales were actually exceeding $1 billion. And so seconds of downtime were costing them thousands of dollars. So here's what they were struggling with. To better handle the load of 130 orders per minute, that they were actually, generate over 1 million unique visits daily, they had a capacity issue. So before they implemented Splunk, the operations team spent hours manually locating an issue, finding the source of the problem. And so for an example, a benign issue such as just a hung thread, something very simple, buried away is like a needle in the haystack, that hung thread would actually cause an outage because they would have to spool up another system, reboot, and recycling these systems caused a traffic jam. That meant it had an impact on the revenue. So what they did, they wanted to build for their NOC, their 24/7 NOC, a way to better handle this. Give us the real-time insights that we know what's going on and proactively act upon it before we actually run into that bottleneck. So where Splunk helped is they actually deployed it at the heart of the NOC, providing that monitoring, dashboarding, searchable interface that they can now troubleshoot and figure out the performance issues before they occur. Splunk, for the first time in 6 years, and this is now we're into the third year since I was going through and looking at this one, Macy's is able to have 0 downtime during their peak holiday. So this is an excellent example of the value that this critical service to the business and their customers, IT is on the front lines providing that value. So Splunk continues to provide that value for them, and they're proactively monitoring. In fact, the last I read, it now takes 90% less time to troubleshoot the issues I said, but their load on their environment has increased significantly. Let me go on to the next one. I put 2 examples in because I like this example. You think about your frontline support, and you want to put real-time insights in their hands, but maybe the search bar isn't what you want them searching across a lot of different data. And Splunk is well positioned how quickly we can put a very tailored searchable interface to them, and it's just simply giving them from the drop-downs what we want to do. So the situation here is the service desk could not respond quickly to this critical 3G service that Vodafone deployed. They had very time-consuming and human resources that was around searching for errors because this is Java 2E that's supporting their 3G services. So they wanted to allow for urgently provide the service desk, the frontline support, with the required information that could quickly respond to the customer's issues and improve that customer satisfaction. So they put this interface, and this interface I really like it because all they simply do is pick from the drop-downs is executing the search for what we're searching in the application stack. What's the time range? I am now seeing potential nested exception. So they now know where to route the call or respond typically to the customer saying this is the issue. So this is a great example of putting Splunk at maybe a level 2 support team that they have the insights and it's tailored or fits their view of the data. But again, with Splunk, it's all the same data. We're just asking different questions of it. So with this, I want to wrap up. Hopefully this is addressed or spoke to some of the wheels are turning, like that's a challenge that we're having. I see where Splunk plays a part of that. And as the wheel starts to turn, what I want to do is open this up. Hopefully it's answered some of your questions or open that to maybe a further dialogue to further explore and talk about that, because we believe that there is value for Splunk for every single customer out there. It's just a matter of exploring that use case and understanding the pain that it can quickly solve and resolve. So what I want to do here, I'm going to hand back to Michelle for a second. We have some contact information here. If you have follow-up calls, you want to learn more about Splunk, you can visit our website for that. We also are going to be, our new Twitter page is up. We're going to be posting, we like to see what's going on from an IT operations standpoint and solving those issues and how this is big data in a way, this data coming from the infrastructure, and it's important to us from an IT operations standpoint. So we're going to be posting articles and insights, so you can follow us there at Twitter as well, additional webinars coming. So Michelle, I'm going to go and open up. I know we're down to our last few minutes here and take a few questions.
We do. The first question comes from Lori. Her question is, our customers use our website to get information on doctors, and they say that it keeps locking up on them. Can Splunk help?
Excellent example. You think about healthcare and the frontline support that they provide both internally and externally, so the customers, in this case, the doctors, and possibly it's patient information. We can Splunk that application environment. We can bring in the information as relevant. And the great thing I love about Splunk is I can exclude certain information. I don't want to see it, but they have that real-time insight of why is this crashing, why is this hanging up that they can't get to that information, whether it's internal or external. And that those insights, they can now make a decision of when it might come back up or which team that needs to go ahead and address it. So it can definitely reduce the escalations.
Our next question comes from Chris Paul. His question is, our main app runs on a mainframe. Can Splunk see applications on a mainframe?
Yeah, mainframes generate a lot of machine data. As I said earlier, it's a part of the critical infrastructure. So if that data is, machine data, it's readable, and we can provide access to Splunk, and that's a great thing. We put a forwarder there, that data is now moving into the index, and we can now search on it. So yes, it can. We see that with quite a few of the customers we're working with. So excellent question, thank you.
Okay.
And thanks to Lori for her question as well.
And our last question comes from Colleen. Who do I contact if I have questions after I install Splunk from your website?
Oh, thank you. Excellent question. So we have two ways, and I'm going to talk about the option on the right-hand side. We would call it a quick start. In 30 to 60 minutes, we love to just show customers the value. Splunk can go from the desktop to the enterprise. And I'll share one last customer example. Major cruise line out of South Florida was having an Apache issue on their web server, and they took them over 30 days, and they still could not get to it. They downloaded onto a desktop system. They took the Apache log files, and they solved the issue in 45 minutes. So what we like to do, just to start to help customers understand the value, is we'll help you install it with what we call a quick start. We'll pick out 3 log files. You go and get those log files, put them on your desktop. Any machine data will do, and we'll go ahead and we'll walk you through the install. We'll help you get that data splunked. We'll point you to some resources to start learning about it, and you can even take it to the point where you want to show your manager a dashboard of that. We can help you do it. So our team is really good in this area, that we like helping customers have what we call that aha moment of looking at the data. We would be glad to work with them. So Colleen, I appreciate asking that. Also for customers, if they want to go to our website today, you can try Splunk. It's free to download, install it on your desktop. When I first started working with it, I added it to my system, and I started, it was up and running and getting data off of my local system, and it made sense. Also online, there's a lot of great tutorials that kind of step you through and understand how I want to get the data in. So with that, Michelle, any last questions come in before we wrap up here?
No, I believe that's all, Paul.
All right. Well, folks, I just want to really thank you for taking your time out of busy schedules. If you see some insights here and some things you have further questions, we would just love to sit down and talk with you and understand those and see if we can help you find those answers. And if you're interested in the quick start, it's definitely a good route to go to just trying out, taking it for a test drive. We have additional webinars that are coming in the new year. I think the next one is up in February. But if there's certain topics, challenges that you're facing from an IT operations standpoint, you're going to get a survey right at the end here. What we would love to do is we really value the feedback. So take some time in the survey, just maybe list some topics. Was this valuable today to you? What value do you take away from it? So with that, I'll go ahead and wrap up and just wish everyone a happy holidays, and thank you very much for joining.